What's up, party people? I'm Chris with Profoto, and this is Geared Up. This is our weekly live broadcast where we talk about lighting, techniques, and gear, photography in general. If you have any questions about it, we try to answer that stuff here live. If you're watching this on Profoto.com, you're going to see some things pop up around the edges. That's just if you want more information on whatever it is that we're talking about. So whenever I say A2, an A2 will probably pop up on the side. If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, you're not going to get that. If you want it, come watch us on Profoto.com. If you don't care, hang with us here. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about how to get your light set up in one shot. So this is a really cool technique. It's something I use a lot. It is really, really good if you're just getting into lighting as well. It's also good if you're seasoned, but you just want to kind of get up and running really, really fast. So, but what we're essentially doing is we're utilizing TTL and manual together to get to where we want to get to and then hold our power settings. So it's a really, really cool technique for getting set up really, really fast. The nice thing is this works both inside and outside. Today's version is the inside version. We are going to do a little outside setup for you in the next couple of weeks. So you'll actually be able to see how we do the same technique outdoors. But today, for the most part, this is going to be about doing this in a controlled environment. So the nice thing about this, though, is you can set your camera settings the way that you want them to be set, not even worry about your light whatsoever, kind of just place it where you'd like it to be. And this technique will help you easily get your light power, at least in the ballpark, for you to get up and running, and then you can make an adjustment for wherever you want to make that adjustment. So it's a really, like I said, it really just simplifies the process in getting your light set up, especially if you have in your idea, you're like, oh, I want to shoot this at f2.8. I want to be at, 160th of a second shutter speed. If you know what settings you need to be at to, make sure you don't have any camera shake, or you're getting the depth of field that you want, or you want to make sure that your ISO is at the place that you would like it to be. The cool thing is the fact that you can just take this, put your camera settings in, and it will follow along, which is really, really nice. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the technique. So also I'm going to open up this thing because I have my chat on to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I see, what's up, Adrian? I see you out there. Sumit and Jose, what's up, my friends? Sumit, maybe. I probably butchered that because I'm really, really bad with names, so I apologize. So light setup wise today, we're going to take a single light shot, and then we're going to throw in a second light so you can see how that second light performs with this setup. So for the first light, we're using a Profoto A2. Got to use the new stuff, right? We just dropped it last week. So we're using a Profoto A2 and a Click Softbox Octa for some nice soft light. And then whenever we go into the second light, we're going to be using a Profoto A10 on an OCF adapter. And I threw a grid on here just for fun, but it's the 20-degree click grid, just to kind of control that light a little bit more. I don't expect it to shoot back here to the background, but just in case, I wanted to keep it off the background. So with the remote, I'll be keeping that first group off. So I'm going to pull my camera out.
You ready for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
So essentially what we're going to do, and you can do this one of two ways. So I've started using the way that I used to originally do this. We'll talk about this if you don't have a gray card. But if you don't have a gray card, you should get a gray card. They're pretty handy. But I'm going to show you this with the gray card, and then I'm going to show you how to do it without a gray card. And that way you can, if you have a gray card and you just forget it on the way, you can still use this technique and it works pretty good. And what we'll do is we'll compare the exposure differences with the gray card, without the gray card. That way you can also decide for yourself if you even care about this. The gray card's just nice too because you have a spot where you can obviously set your white balance. So essentially what we're doing, take a tiny step back. So essentially what we're going to have is Kate is going to hold the gray card right at her face, because the place that I want the exposure to be is at her, is the best exposure on her face, at least for this shot. So we're going to have the light held right here. I'm going to come up really, really close, and I'm actually going to take a really tight shot of this gray. And when I do that, the camera is going to see that. It's going to set the exposure of the light with TTL based off of making this gray 18%. So, and then the nice thing about that is that should translate over to Kate's exposure, which is really, really dynamite. So hold that for me. And then I'm going to also show you how it sets up really fast as far as like changing your camera settings. So it's a really awesome technique. So let's I'm going to, just for fun, just so you can see that I'm gonna mess up all my camera settings. So let's, actually I need to do it from the remote. So I'm gonna go here. I'm gonna turn the power of the A10 all the way down, and I'm actually gonna turn the B10, or not the A10, the A2 all the way down, and then I'm gonna turn the B10 goodness gracious, I am having a hard time speaking right now.
I'm gonna switch this.
I'm gonna turn the A2 all the way down and the A10 off, because we're gonna do this with one light first. So the A2 power is all the way down. All these numbers and letters are confusing me. All right, ready to rock? Oh, we're just switching over the side shot.
Yeah, I figured that's a little better. We'll see.
Sweet. So what we're gonna do is and the shot doesn't have to be in focus. As a matter of fact, I think it's better when it's out of focus. The grade card, you can go in focus if you want to, but so all I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna take a non-TTL shot just so people can see.
My face or the grade card?
I'm just gonna take a TTL shot so people can see that it's actually dark right now. So the screen's gonna pop up, should be a black frame. That's what the camera sees right now. So now I'm gonna flip into TTL mode. Kate, hold the grade card up to your face. I'm gonna go right up close to the grade card. Take a shot. Oh, my fat hand got in the way. Hold on, let's do this one more time. There we go. So you can see the grade card shot. Let's actually delete out that, the mess with. So that was the last shot, that grade card shot that you see there. So all I'm gonna do now is take my Kinect Pro and I'm gonna flip it into manual mode. And the cool thing about that is it's gonna take that last power setting of the A2 and it's gonna hold there. So now when I take the shot of Kate and I back up a little bit, notice the light just a little bit. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. That's a perfect exposure on her. Right, so how simple is that, right? So you're utilizing the light meter inside your camera to get your exposure set the way that you want to get your exposure set to. So now, hold this for me again. So now if I want to change this up completely, maybe I want to go to, the only tough thing is I'm going to go to f2.8 and I've got these video lights that are probably going to fight me a little bit. So you know what, let's go to f2 and then I'm going to go into high speed sync, 2,000th of a second. Let's make sure that we are in FP on my camera. So there we go, focal plane. Let's do this. So now I'm gonna take that same shot, hold that up for me. So there's the gray. Cool. Actually looks maybe a touch under. Let me try this one more time. Pull that back up for me one more time. I feel like my hand keeps getting in the way of that thing. That's pretty good. Cool. Take the gray card, and then mostly this is just about me putting my fat hands in. Oh, it's also about me doing the wrong thing. I didn't put it in TTL mode. I thought it was shadowy, so I apologize. So
go back through what you're doing.
So it's the same thing now that I've messed everything up and confused everybody. I forgot to flip my trigger back into TTL mode. So from that last shot that you see on the screen, I've now put my trigger back into TTL mode and we're gonna take the skin tone shot based off the new camera settings. So the last one was f8, 250th of a second shutter speed, ISO 160. We are now at ISO 160, but a shutter speed of 2000 and f2.8, or f2 actually. So let's go in here really tight. We're in TTL mode because I'm trying not to mess this up. Cool. So there we go there. That looks a little more accurate. It might be a touch over, but the cool thing about this is it gets us in the ballpark. So now I'm just gonna flip back into manual mode. Take the shot, 3, nose this way a little bit. There we go. 3, 2, 1. So you go. And so this shot's maybe a touch overexposed. So what I can do is, because I am now locked into manual mode, and right here from the top of the Kinect, I can just dial this thing back a little bit. I can see on top of my Kinect Pro what my A2 is saying. So here we go. But very, very simple. So with one shot, you can get right in the ballpark and have your stuff set up and ready to rock and roll. It's a really, really awesome technique for utilizing this stuff. Do you want to see if let's see if I have any questions from anybody before I jump into the second light.
Not everybody owns a light meter.
Yes. So this is this is also really, really awesome for the people who don't own a light meter. A lot of people don't have one. I have one, but there's a lot of times I just don't want to break it out. And I do a lot of my photography with one light. So this technique works really, really well for me. So let me show you before we jump, actually now that I'm thinking about this, before we jump into the second light, let me show you how you can do this without the gray card. So maybe...
Do you want me to hop back, Rick?
Yeah, let's have you hop back in here.
Great.
So we're gonna do this without the gray card, and we're gonna compare the exposure. So I'm gonna actually flip back out of high speed sync. I'm gonna go back to the original settings. So 2/50th of a second, f8, 160. So, and we were around a power level of 8.5-ish when we originally took that shot, 8.4-ish, whenever we took that shot on the A2. So now what we want to do is we're going to take this same shot, but we want to zoom really, really into the subject's skin. So since I know for the most part she's going to have her face kind of facing this way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in really close to her cheek. I know I'm shooting with a non-zoom lens, so this is a little bit harder. So, but I'm going to take a shot. So I take, oh, of course I didn't put it in TTL mode, so let's do this one more time. Apologies. So when I'm going to zoom in really tight, I'm going to take a shot. So now we're in TTL mode. So this, once I flip over to manual and back up and take the shot, 3, 2, 1, has us in the zone. So if you have a gray card, sick, use the gray card, because you can also take that sample of the gray card and help you with your white balance if you're having any white balance issues. But if you don't have a gray card or you screw up, sometimes I forget things, and you forget your gray card, you can still do this technique by zooming in really tight. The shot was, let me see if, oh, I'm not seeing the skin tone shot, but so the cool thing about the skin tone shot is the blurrier, the better. So it doesn't have to be in focus. Now, obviously, if you're gonna wind up having to get close to somebody like I just did with Kate, you wanna make sure that you're like, hey, is it cool if I come in really tight, take a skin tone shot? Or if you have a tripod and you can take one of yourself, that's a good move there. But just make sure you're asking permission to get that close to somebody if you don't have a zoom lens. Or don't, and then stay out pretty far, and then just ballpark it if you need to, if you're uncomfortable in that situation. But it's something that I use a lot. I use it as when I usually go up really close to somebody like that, I kind of use it as an icebreaker for the most part. Granted, I gauge their willingness to let me get my camera pretty close to their face. So just make sure that you're kind of feeling out your subjects and stuff like that. But if you, again, forget your gray card, really, really awesome move. And the other cool thing about the gray card too is at least this one is it's got a 1/4-20 port on the bottom of it, so I can put it on a light stand right where I need it, and I don't have to have the person hold it up and still get close to the person. So if you're not really into that kind of stuff, if you like to have a little more separation between you and your subject, that's also a really, really good move. So cool. Let's do this now with a second light and show you how the remote acts with a second light in TTL mode when you take the shot. So essentially what's happening when you are going into your second flash on any of the TTL units, you're essentially ratioing the light off or you're telling the light, hey, whatever the overall exposure is, I want you to be such and such from the light ahead. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this A10 up here as the hair light to be one stop, or actually about 1.5 stops lower than the overall exposure of the shot. So it's not a true ratio. So like if you're like, oh, is it a 2-to-1 ratio? Is it a 4-to-1 ratio? 8-to-1, blah, 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 blah. It's not a true ratio in that sense. Essentially what's happening is it's seeing what the overall exposure is, and the remote's gonna say, hey, drop it this much. Cool? You good?
I'm good.
Cool. So let's go into TTL mode, and I'm going to set group B down -1.5. So whatever this number is, and I'll be able to tell by looking at the top of the trigger, and I'll tell you, but whatever this number is, the A10 will be 1.5 stops lower than that number. So here's our card again. I like the card method. I used to do the other method before, but the card method I personally like way better. So we're in TTL mode, we're good to go. Take a tiny step back for me. There we go. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. Thank you. So we're at 8.1 on the power of the A2, which means we should be at about 6.6 on the A10, and I'll be able to tell that right now. Yep, and we're at 6.6. So now when we take the shot, we'll have a nice little hair light. It'll be 1.5 stops down from the overall exposure. But again, an easy way to add another light in there, and then you're in the ballpark. You can always make adjustments from there. So here we go. 3, 2, drop the chin down just a little bit. 3, 2, 1. So we go. We have a nice little hair light. You can see kind of the light creeping out around the hat here on the shoulders. If I decided that I wanted a little bit more, I could just select group B and I could bop that power up just a little bit. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. So we go. And so you're starting to see the hair light come up a little bit more in the shot. So again, this is a really, I'm going to set this thing down on the ground. I'm going to wind up kicking it. I'm going to actually do the right thing and put it on my tripod. So again, thanks, Kate.
You're welcome.
So again, this is a really, really simple way of getting your light set up really, really quickly, utilizing the TTL to manual. So the things to think about if this technique is the right technique for the way that you're shooting. So is your subject still? If they're still, this is good for that, because you don't want anything changing distance-wise between your subject and your light, okay? So you can move around as much as you want to. So as the photographer, you can move and play with angles. Maybe you move to one side, you short light them, maybe move to the other side and take the shot and it's more of a broad light. You can move wherever you want to move. As long as the light and the subject don't change or your camera settings don't change, you can move as much as you'd like to. So that's one way to one thing you want to. So if your subject is dynamic, maybe you're photographing a dancer and they're getting closer to the light, a little bit further away from the light, maybe you want to stay in TTL mode and just ride your flash exposure compensation. But again, if this works really, really well if your subject and your light aren't moving in relationship to one another. So that's something to keep in mind there as well. So, but like I said, a really, really awesome technique for getting set up very, very quickly, utilizing the TTL, flipping over into manual mode to lock that power setting into place, and then understanding what's happening when you're using a second light and how the groups operate whenever you're making flash exposure compensations plus or minus whatever the exposure is generally going to be. So does anybody have any questions that I need to answer?
It looks like Anders answered it, but it was asking about the equivalent power of 1 to 64, of 1 to 64, 1 to 32 power ratios on a standard flash like a Canon.
Oh yeah, so a lot of people, yes, so a lot of people wonder about how the power ratios work on ProPhoto. So at ProPhoto, 10 is full power, 9 is half power, 8 is quarter power, then 8th, 16th, 32nd, all the way down. So again, 10 full power, 9 is half power. So if this is a 100 watt second light at 10, then at 9 it's 50 watt seconds. So that's how it works. So each stop down cuts the number in half, right? So just think of it that way. So 1 over 1 is 10, 1 half is 9, a quarter power, 8, all that good stuff. So, but Anders got it in the chat. I just want to make sure people know here as well if anyone has that question. So let's see. Do you guys miss Swedeland? Sweden was super fun.
That's beautiful.
It's nice to like have Anders in there and get to rock with all the people too. There's, especially like if I have an idea or Kate has an idea, we can bounce it off of other people, which is kind of fun. So yeah, it's super fun being in Sweden. It's also nice to be home. Yeah. So it's hopefully we can just strike a nice balance of going there and being here. So with the camera being so close to the gray card, put a shadow on the card. It can. That's why this is from my man Dan Donovan. So it can put a shadow on the card. That's why if you saw me when Kate was holding it, I was pointing myself over here a little bit more and getting in there to make sure. So I deleted one of the shots where my fat hand got into the shot. My meaty hands. So yes, it can. So you want to make sure that you try to minimize those shadows. You don't want that to happen. So again, if you just cock the camera over a little bit at an angle and try to get out of the way, it should be fine.
Does this technique work just as well on location?
Yes. So this technique works almost just as well on location. Again, so next week we have a hard versus soft light live to kick off a contest. But the week following, Kate and I are actually going to run out. We're going to do some recording outside, and we're going to do a live with a pre-record where we can roll the video and show you how you do this exact same technique, but under the circumstances of now you're battling with the sun, right? So yes, this technique does work outside. There's a caveat to how you set your camera. We are going to address that and also show you kind of how you can get your fill light looking just the way that you want it to look before you even take that shot with your flash. So it should be really, really fun. It's gonna be our first thing that we do outdoors, which we're gonna hopefully keep expanding on and doing a whole lot more of that stuff. So yes, outdoors works great. With a caveat, we're gonna talk about that in 2 weeks. Let's see. Does the technique, oh yeah, okay, so someone asked that same question on YouTube too, so awesome. So, but yeah, so this is super fun. Again, a really, really simple technique for getting your camera and your light set up really quickly. The nice thing is you can set your camera to the exact settings that you want, and then your light will just follow along with it. So again, so just to go through verbally what it is that we did. So we took our camera and we set it exactly the way we wanted. So that first shot we took of Kate, which actually if you see the shot here of her on the screen currently, that shot of Kate is at f8, ISO 160, 250th of a second. I know that I wanted that, one, because it's hard for me to shoot wide open in here because all of these video lights lets in too much light. So I try to close it down. So I was in that zone, and you also saw it work because I turned the power of the A2 all the way down. So set your camera to what you want your shot to look like. Check. Then put your light where you want it. Check. Make sure that you have your TTL mode enabled on your trigger. And the first shot you want to do is you want to get either a gray card right close to your subject's face, so have your subject hold the face up, or if you can mount the gray card to a stand, get it right where you're going to have your subject, take a shot of the gray, and let the TTL lock in that, or TTL grab that exposure, right? Then we're going to flip that remote into manual mode, and that power setting now is locked in place. It's not going to move. So this is one of the really, really sweet things about how we designed the TTL system at Profoto. So it will lock that power setting into place, and from there on, you can just keep shooting. And as long as your subject and light don't move in relationship to one another, or you don't change the camera settings, you don't have to do anything. If one of those things change, then all you do is you flip back into auto, you take another shot with the card, or you get up, we showed you the technique with Kate where you get up really, really close and throw the skin way out of focus and take that shot, and you're good to go again. You just flip back into manual mode and you're locked back into place. So anytime those things change there. Another thing to think about, so let's talk about all the triggers that this works on. So this is gonna work on the new Connect Pro, the Connect. This works on the Air TTL remotes. So any of our TTL enabled stuff. It also works with any of the A1, A1X, and A10s. The thing where you're gonna find trouble, and this again is to think about as long as your light and your subject aren't moving, if you're on camera with your A10, this technique doesn't work if you're moving. Okay, so if you're at an event and you're walking around and flipping back and forth, the technique doesn't work, just because if I go up close and get the shot and then I come back here and I flip into manual mode, the light has now moved in relationship to my subject. So if it's on camera, best to stay TTL mode and just ride the flash exposure compensation. But again, if the light and the subject don't change in relationship to one another, this is an awesome technique. So is there anything I may have forgot, Kate?
Oh, no, I think we're good.
So cool. I'm gonna double check to make sure I don't have any questions that I've missed. Someone asked, is the A2 beam the same as the B series lights or more narrow like an A series light? So if I'm not mistaken, so the A series lights zoom, like as far as like the A1, A1X, and A10. The A2 doesn't zoom. It's a fixed 66-degree beam angle. So the B10 is a 68-degree beam angle. So they're roughly the same angle. So to compare, you would have to just kind of zoom the A10 to something relatively close to get the same light quality. But this thing is it's the fall off on the edges of the A2 is really, really beautiful. So, but it's because the A10 is variable, it's hard to say like it's the exact same beam angle, because the A2 could be super wide or it could be super tight. Sweet.
Someone was saying about these lights here, they're confused because they see these lights up here.
Yes, so unfortunately I have video lights. I mean, it's how you see us with the video cameras roll. Trust me that whenever I see through my camera, when I'm taking photos, when I see the camera with Kate, and I take the shot, it messes with my brain too whenever the image pops up on the screen. It just is what it is. Like, the lights are on because you have to be able to see what we're doing and see kind of where the lights are placed. But at the end of the day, you know, the photo is whatever this thing's making.
Yeah, it doesn't impact the shot at all.
And that's why I generally try to select the settings that I select. So whenever I go to, like, again, f8, 1/250 of a second, ISO 160, I always check to make sure that I can't see that there's no light leaking into my sensor from the video lights. So could you please compare the temperatures of the A2 or A10? Do they match? They should match. They use a lot of the same components. I don't really have a setup right now for comparing the temperatures, but I'll be more than happy to do a side-by-side light quality comparison between an A2 and an A10. That'd be super fun.
Absolutely.
So we'll save that for another live, but we'll 100% do that.
I want to buy something to hold the background. How can I search?
Oh yeah, there's
find, like, what we're
so
using?
Someone's just asking for, like, what kind of grip stuff you can use to hold up your background. So all we're doing with this is a first and foremost hand painted background by yours truly, by Kate. Yeah, she painted that herself. Very, very talented. She's multi-talented. So we fasten this to a large wooden dowel, and we just use super clamps up there. If you want to just do, like, the single grabby hand thing that you can do, I think they're called, like, Mathellini clamps or something like that, but Matthews Grip makes them.
What is this? What is?
And then if you're talking about for my background, it's just like it's a chain drive that you can the Manfrotto makes them. They're called, like, Varipoles or something like that. I just mounted mine to the ceiling because I didn't want extra poles there. But yeah, it's just a chain drive. You can just look up chain drive for that. So if you're looking for like a seamless thing, look up a chain drive if you want something like that. If you're looking for more like holding up like this painted backdrop or a piece of seamless, I use a lot of times for seamless, I'll use a grip arm. So this thing, this holding up my A10 right now. So I'll use a grip arm and I'll just slide the paper onto it, and I'll use one of these, a little alligator clamp. I know we're getting into the weeds on a whole bunch of stuff we're about to sign off, but just an alligator clamp to clip it into place. That's good. Mathellini clamp for something super awesome, and a chain drive for seamless. So sweet. Are we good?
Yeah.
Sweet. Thank you all so much for kicking it with us today. This is super fun live. I love, like, these little cool techniques that can help you, again, get set up really, really easy, especially for the people who are maybe a touch afraid of lighting. This is a really great way. It's a great way. This is a really great way to get set up and running in no time. So yeah, set your camera, take a TTL shot, lock it down in a manual. You're done. And then in a couple of weeks, I'll show you how to do it outside. So in the meantime, have an awesome rest of your week. We'll see you next time on Geared Up. Peace out.